Hello viewers, and welcome to this walkthrough video in which we will be discussing, learning more about um, how you as language teachers can go about helping your learners improve their writing skills. So a few key concepts to keep in mind. One, writing is a journey. We as language teachers need to make clear to our learners, guide them along the way uh, in outlining, pre-writing, generating interest in the topics they're writing about as part of the journey, then guiding them through the actual writing itself, and then finally providing much needed feedback and guidance as part of the assessment of their writing progress. Another key concept is that authentic writing is absolutely crucial. Our learners need to basically feel that what they're producing as writers is relevant, that it has a real life application or use, and that it's not just some empty exercise from a course book, and that ultimately the audience will be greater than just the teacher. And one concept I cannot emphasize enough is that feedback is vital. Learners need to receive feedback, positive and negative, along the way, at each step of the journey, in order to feel a sense of, well, improvement and achievement. It's a lot like working out or dieting. If you feel that you're making progress, it motivates you to keep going. Okay, so we're going to watch a video in which I demonstrate how I use a writing code to provide feedback on one of my students' writing submissions. And as you watch the following video, I'd like you to pay attention to and be prepared to answer the following. Is this writing exercise an authentic one? Is it relevant? Does it look familiar at all to any of you? Does the teacher, that's me, point out and correct every mistake? If so, why? If not, why not? Why does the teacher use a color code? And that may also bring up the question as to why use a code at all? Why not just tell the student explicitly and directly what's in need of improvement? Why not simply edit their writing yourself? Well, obviously the answer to that is that then learners do not learn. They become dependent on the teacher as an editor rather than equipping them to self-assess and improve their writing themselves. And finally, what do the blue highlights indicate, and why is it important to highlight this? Okay, now here we go. Hi everyone, and welcome to a walkthrough video. I'm kind of piloting or trying something a bit new here. That is showing an example of guided writing improvement using a color code. Students quite often open feedback from their teachers, well, from me at least, on their phone, and then they're not equipped to see comments, for example, in the review mode in Microsoft Word. So it became apparent to me a while ago that using highlighted colors to indicate language mistakes is something you can't miss. If you open the document on a phone or a computer, a laptop, a tablet, you can't miss the color coding. So I've taken the liberty of creating a code. Green will indicate a grammatical error. Blue indicates a good chunk of language. Red indicates a vocabulary error. Yellow, a spelling error. Purple, a sentence level error, such as a fragment or a run-on. Gray would indicate vague or unclear language. And orange indicates a missing word or phrase. And I realize that here I chose the wrong color. Looking back at my code, I now see that I should have chosen purple instead of yellow. Okay, we're ready to go. Now, we see the code in front of us, and we see a sample piece of writing by one of my students. So let's see if we can't puzzle out and figure out the mistakes ourselves in order to fix them. The piece reads, language teachers all over the world tend to have their methods for second language acquisition. And I've marked this gray, it's vague or unclear. It, again, rather vague and unclear, differs from speaking the first language, L1, the target language, TL, or most commonly a mixture of both the L1 and TL. And here I've indicated mixture doesn't really seem like the right word. It's a vocabulary error. In addition, nice, good chunk of language, the nationality of the educator could also play a role within these decisions. He or she is a native or non-native language educator, whoever has their own beliefs regarding teaching. Now the is, I think, is a grammar error. And the whoever is not the right word in this context. However, these three methods are being debated in order to investigate the best way for learners to learn a foreign language. I'd say that's a grammatical error. What does the second language acquisition depend on? Which factors should be kept in mind? The different aspects to be kept in mind range from the amount of TL, target language used, within the foreign language classrooms, to the anxiety which accompanies speaking the target language. Among teachers and specialists, it has been a discussion for many years, still without a decisive outcome, due to it having many aspects to consider. It having, I would also say, is vague or unclear. I'm also going to mark this green, indicating that I think the grammar needs improvement there. So let's see if we can't figure it out. Language teachers all over the world tend to have, I'd say it'd be better to write their own particular, their own specific methods, or a variety of their own methods for second language acquisition. It, and I would say here, let's make it clearer by saying this. If I say this, if I write this, then it's clear that it refers to the sentence that's quite close by, the sentence right before it. This differs from speaking the first, the target, or most commonly a combination, I think, is a better word in this context. Mixture refers, in my understanding, contextually to things like a mixture of egg and flour to make the cake, a mixture of red and blue to make purple. Combination is a better choice for concepts of both the L1 and L2. In addition, nice. He or she is a native or non-native language educator. Well, what sounds a bit weird to me is that here we've used this could also play a role. So we've got more hypothetical language. So here I would use either a hypothetical or a future tense. Listen. In addition, the nationality of the educator could also play a role within these decisions. He or she will be, might be a native or non-native language educator who has their own beliefs regarding teaching. Who? However, these three methods, I would not use present continuous in the passive voice here. I would use these three methods are often debated, are frequently debated, are debated. In terms of grammar, I would use present simple there because it's a fact. It happens regularly. These three methods are often debated in order to investigate the best way for learners to learn a foreign language. This is a nice sentence here in blue. And lastly, among teachers and specialists, it has been a discussion for many years. I do want to point out that I'm very proud of this student of mine for having correctly used present perfect tense. Hooray. Still without a decisive outcome. You know what? I'm going to mark that blue because I think that's excellent vocabulary. Due to it having many aspects. What is it? I've lost the plot here. I think it would be better to write something like, due to the issue, due to the nature of the problem, having many aspects. Actually, what I would say is something like, due to, let's say, the fact that this issue, let's really pimp it up here, encompasses or entails, sorry, I'll type that correctly, entails many aspects. And instead of to consider, you could use passive voice. You could say you could write to be considered, or use a different form altogether. Let's read it and see how it sounds. Among teachers and specialists, it has been a discussion for many years, still without a decisive outcome, due to the fact that this issue entails many aspects for consideration. Due to the fact that this issue encompasses, I like encompasses better, many aspects to be considered. And I rather like for consideration. Due to the fact that this issue encompasses many aspects for consideration. Okay, now we have watched the video, and now the question is, well, there are questions to be answered. So I asked you to pay attention to the following. Is this writing exercise an authentic one? Well, to those students of mine out there who are following research writing, this is an authentic, relevant exercise because it's a snippet, it's a small piece of a draft research writing paper. Thus, the exercise is relevant and useful to the author, to the student, because they're getting feedback on something they will submit at the end of the semester. Does the teacher, that's me, point out and correct every mistake? No. As a teacher, it's important to keep in mind that you don't want to overwhelm your learners with so much feedback, especially if it's language in need of improvement, that they feel discouraged. So as we know from the Theories of Language Learning course, it's important to keep in mind learners' affective filter and sense of self-confidence. So pointing out and correcting every mistake is probably not good for their self-confidence. Which mistakes does one then highlight for improvement? Those that are within the learner's grasp, and any points that prevent reader understanding, right? Why do I use a color code? Well, I explained that at the beginning of the video. Essentially, it's because so many of my students open their work on their phone while they're on the train, while they're on the tram. They probably shouldn't do this, but it's reality. It's what people do. And then quite often they're not able to see feedback if it's not, the document hasn't been opened on a PC, right? So I discovered years ago that using a color code is much more visible on all types of digital and electronic platforms. Plus, I think it looks nice. I think it's aesthetically pleasing to the eye and looks more friendly. What do the blue highlights indicate, and why is it important to highlight good chunks of language? Because again, as a teacher, one always wants to make clear to learners that they're doing well. So it's important to point out tips and tops, right? Oh, and one last thing. Why does the teacher read the writing aloud so often? Quite often I stop and say, okay, let's read that out loud and see how it sounds. Because that's also part of the journey of writing. Reading one's writing aloud to oneself or to someone else is part of the editing process. I mean, the writing doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's important to hear what the written text sounds like. I do hope this helps, and thanks for watching, everyone.